Thank you so much for being with us today. Sarah, I have your book here, A Life Stolen, and I look at the pictures of your beautiful child. And I talked about today spending, hours in a water park with my 3-year-old son. No one can prepare or imagine this type of grief, and what you did to find peace is stunning. You say that it was a journey, a battle, if you will. You were a working mom. You describe your life as a normal life, and then all of a sudden, you found yourself in a nightmare. Take me to those calls, and what was it like when you first clearly understood what you were being told?
It was the very beginning, from the very first phone call. It was just the police would not investigate it. So that's when it started, literally the first day that I found out, because they just said he just took drugs and died. And it just sort of started from there, because I kept saying to him, he wouldn't do it. He would not do this himself. And they just wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't listen to his 2 best friends, to his family, to anybody. And they just refused to investigate his death.
When they told you they weren't willing to do anything further, I mean, they say it was a drug overdose, case closed, nothing else we could do. I would imagine you said, why? Why can't you? What is preventing you from investigating it?
Yeah, well, when I had said that, my police liaison officer actually said, well, we've spent £25,000 this week looking at his death, as if that was, okay, we've done it, it's finished.
You wrote about it in your journal in 2015. You said, I started emailing the police to get any information, and every time I asked if there was any more news, I was told every time there was nothing to investigate, as Anthony had poisoned himself, and the frustration drove me crazy. That excerpt reminded me so much of after my sister's death, and my family, my brother Clarence Sr., my mother, my sister's children calling police, asking for more answers. And you have all of your hopes in them, and being met with, well, we don't know. And I think that's it's a jarring feeling to have, because you feel that the police are there to help you, and they seem to be a roadblock in some of these situations.
Yes, there was a roadblock from the very beginning. Their role is actually protect and serve, and they didn't do any of it. They just, every time I rang, it was just, well, there's nothing to investigate. What are we going to look at? And it had me in tears most of the time, because, at first I thought you couldn't fight the police, but I've learned after 8 years, yes, you can. And yes, you can win.
We are back with Sarah Sack and Kate Whelan, whose lives turned into an unimaginable place in 2014 after Sarah's 23-year-old son, Anthony, was found dead. Although authorities told her there was nothing to investigate, Sarah and Kate never gave up their fight for justice. So, Sarah, I mean, at what point did you say, I'm not just a mom, now I'm an investigator? I've got to dig in on this and find out what happened.
When we started to, we kept looking at the local news in that area. And then when Gabriel was found, I knew something was wrong then. And we kept looking, checking, then going on to maps to see how far.
Well, you said Gabriel. What our audience doesn't know, and I know, they started to find similar, that's okay, started to find similar cases. And so there were other cases similar to your son. So suddenly you were looking at a potential serial killer.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Once we sort of Google mapped where Gabriel was found, and then the next boy, Daniel, and that's when I was ringing the police, and I'm saying, there's another 2 young boys found, young men found literally less than a mile away from Anthony. And the police just kept saying all the time that it was just coincidence. They had nothing to do with each other. And I'd said, but they were a mile apart, a couple of weeks apart, and, this is wrong, something's not right. Yeah. And they turned around and said, well, we get more murders here in a week than you get in a year in Hull, where we're from. And they just wouldn't, even the local newspapers was printing, is something wrong? Have we got a serial killer?
So this person, someone was eventually arrested and charged, Sarah, with the deaths. Yeah. When that happened, did you go back to the police and say, okay, you got it really, really wrong this time, and he could have killed more folks?
Yeah, well, when they actually rang me to tell me that that he'd been arrested for Anthony's murder and 3 others, to be quite honest, I just burst into tears because I was right all along. And I've always said, if they'd have done something, if they'd have listened originally to me, 3 more boys wouldn't have died. It wouldn't have saved Anthony, but the other 3 boys would not have died. And I just blame the police.
Well, it's incredible what you've done in investigating. You go, as you said, a hardworking mom to an investigator to solve the death of your own son. A Life Stolen, the tragic, true story of my son's murder is an incredible book. Sarah and Kate, thank you so much for joining us. A Life Stolen is available everywhere books are sold.